everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Cavanaugh's Corner. In the last couple weeks, I've done some pretty deadly serious films, and I appreciate you watching the videos and coming back to the channel. But today I'm going to be talking about a completely wacky movie. Today I'm talking about Evil Dead 2 on 4K. This movie's always been a favorite of mine. I've always enjoyed this movie since I was younger. Probably watched it at an age that was a little too young, but I always got a kick out of this film. Bruce Campbell's performance in this movie is just slapstick, classic comedy. He is just fantastic in this, and it really is a movie that stuck with me. Sam Raimi, as a director, has always been one of my favorite directors of all time. And I'm really glad that this movie finally came out in 4K. This is a movie I've been waiting for a while. As I mentioned, it's been a favorite of mine since I was young. And I was curious to see how much they were going to improve this movie with the 4K format. And I was pleasantly surprised in certain points, but the movie does show its age, and I'm going to get into that right now. Now, this movie, again, it was not the highest budget film ever, but the movie does have some really spectacular practical effects. The optical shots, not so much, but we'll get into that later. The movie is just very wacky. If you've seen Evil Dead 2, you know what I'm talking about. It's really a wild blend of just gruesome horror mixed with like Three Stooges comedy. It's a riot. But Sam Raimi's direction in this movie is really, really spectacular. He does some things with the camera in this film that are just wild, and I always got a kick out of that, and it really inspired me to a love of filmmaking as I got older. And really, Evil Dead 2 here on 4K is kind of a mixed bag, sadly. The movie itself looks beautiful at certain points. The scenes that have really been improved are obviously any scene that has any kind of blood, anything with makeup effects. This looks really, really spectacular. Most of the film, oddly enough, seemed a little bit brighter, which is weird for 4K. There are some shots in the film where optical effects are used, where the movie really, really shows its age in 4K. A while back, I reviewed E.T., and that movie I love and adore. It's one of my favorite films of all time as well. But whenever they start going into those optical effects where they in camera kind of had to mix two things together, it really doesn't look great, and this looks even worse, sadly. There is a lot of grain in this one, and I don't mind grain. I think film grain in a movie is fantastic, because if you take out the grain and you start using digital noise reduction, you lose a lot of the picture quality. I'm glad they did not do that with this film. They kept it pretty much as is, but when those optical shots come in, especially near the end of the film, it does not look very good. It really looks a little rough around the edges, but I'd say about 80% of the movie looks really fantastic now. The picture quality on this, the clarity at certain points, like I said, through most of the film, is the clearest and the most beautiful this movie has ever looked. I had this movie on standard Blu-ray, and that Blu-ray is also included in this. And that was a massive improvement over the older DVDs. But this new 4K, you really get a handle on the actual color palette of the film. The clarity of the film is way more improved. And just overall, you can really get a really good look at some of those practical effects that are used throughout the film. The HDR used in this, it is Dolby Vision HDR, which I was very glad to see. The Dolby Vision is outstanding on this disc, and that is the number one thing I can say about the disc, is the Dolby Vision looks amazing. I was really, really impressed by the Dolby Vision. And the reason why I was impressed is because that Dolby Vision lends a lot to not only the black levels of the film, which are pretty good because most of the movie does take place at night. Those black levels look great on this disc. The overall color palette of the movie is vastly improved because of that as well. Skin tones, the massive amounts of blood that is in this movie, it has a new, beautiful look to it. Calling blood beautiful is very weird. It's kind of creepy almost, but there are some scenes in the movie that look absolutely gorgeous now, thanks to the HDR. One scene in particular is a scene where Bruce Campbell is, after he cuts his hand off when it gets possessed, and the hand starts crawling around, the hand crawls into like a mouse hole in a wall, and he starts shooting at the wall with a shotgun, which is just wild. But there's this blood that seeps out of the wall and sprays on him like a geyser, and it just looks absolutely incredible now. The different colors of the blood look beautiful in this new disc, and I was very impressed with the Dolby Vision. On top of that, as I mentioned earlier, the effects of the film are really, really wild. And with the Dolby Vision, you get a better handle on the actual makeup in the movie. The makeup in the film is just crazy looking. Even the beginning of the film where Ash puts his head lands in this puddle and he wakes up and it's that like demon Ash face. That makeup just jumps out at you now thanks to this new 4K, and it's really unbelievable to see. You can really, really get a handle on that makeup, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was great looking. Where the disc kind of falters, as I mentioned earlier, is, like I said, those optical effects look rough, and sadly there's no real way to improve it because that's the original negative. That's how they looked. There's really not much you can do to clean that up. But the audio on the disc is also somewhat okay. It's pretty much the same DTS 5.1 surround sound mix that was on the old Blu-ray, and it's great. It's a great sound mix. There's nothing wrong with it. It's very well balanced. The sound effects come through very clear. And the only thing I kind of wish for was a Dolby Atmos mix or a DTS X mix. But the 5.1 that's included is fine. I was just really hoping they would put a new sound mix on the disc. Instead, they kind of went with the old one that they had before. And I can understand that it's an older movie, but when you see movies like Philadelphia and Schindler's List that have these new Dolby Atmos mixes, and those movies don't have nearly the kind of effects that this thing does, you kind of wish for it now, and I guess I've just been spoiled, but for what you get, it's not bad. It's just the same mix you got before in 4K. That's pretty much it. Other than that, I mean, the only real other thing I can really mention with this new disc is the fact that the 4K does have a new documentary. It is a French documentary because the movie is owned by Studio Canal, and they are a French film production company. And it's okay. I kind of felt like it droned on a little too long. It was a little too loopy. It felt a little overdone for me. But the best thing about the documentary is that they interview Guillermo del Toro, who is just a phenomenal director, and his love for this film is it's pure. It's like true love, and he knows things about this movie. And he mentions his love of the film throughout that documentary. And just seeing his little snippets in that makes it worth the watch. Other than that, they interview a lot of people that I'm kind of like, who cares, But it's true that this movie does have an extreme following, and it's really wild to see these people from all these different walks of life, whether they be filmmakers, writers, whoever, critics. They're all in love with this movie, and it's really neat to see. The Blu-ray that's included, as I mentioned, is the older Blu-ray, and it does have all the special features that were included on that, which are really great. Some really great behind-the-scenes documentaries that are included on that as well. Those are definitely worth the watch. I had already seen them from before, but if you haven't, they are just fantastic and definitely worth your time, even more so than the new documentary that was included on the 4K disc. Overall, I'd say if you like Evil Dead 2, it's definitely worth the purchase. I picked this up around like $15-16. It's definitely worth it for that price. I really enjoyed it. If you like the movie, you're going to love this disc. If you don't, then I would stay away, honestly. It's just going to improve your love of the film if you already liked it. If you don't, it's not going to do anything different. But I do love this movie, and I really like this disc, even though, like I said, the movie does show its age at times. It's great to see it in the new format, and it's great to see it with that new color palette, because it really brings out a vibrancy of the film that was totally missing before. Anyway, I'm Andrew Cavanaugh. Thank you for coming back to Cavanaugh's Corner. If you enjoyed this, please hit that thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time. Thank you so much.